All right. We're back. Appreciate you riding along with us this morning. You know, I sat in on a call last night on the issue about the Article 5 Convention of States, CON, whatever you want to call it. I mean, there's a million different variant names out there. And, you know, some of the issues that we discussed were, or that were discussed, I should say, were very interesting. And I foresee that even if that is the path that Americans take in an attempt to reconfigure our country back into a position of liberty or back into a position of control, that it's going to be a difficult road. And one of the ways in which it's going to be difficult is the fact that we're seeing a cold-blooded attempt to silence the alternative media in this country. Now, you've heard me talk before about the fact that we are living in a police state and that the mainstream media out there, and we're talking here about all of the news programs, and I'm including Fox in that, Fox and Communist News Network and MSLSD and CBS, the Communist Broadcasting System, and NBC and ABC, all of these organizations that are out there broadcasting as news organizations are merely propaganda mouthpieces for not just this administration, folks. This has been going on for a very, very long time. It has not just risen its head in the last 5 years. The only way that we can get the public educated about what's really happening is by alternative media source, and that is the internet, and that is radio. I've got to tell you, none of us wield the power and the money to become the next New York Times or Wall Street Journal or Chicago Tribune. None of us have the financial wherewithal to become the next Fox News, the next Communist News Network. I mean, if it's not for alternative media, folks, we're in a blackout, a true blackout on the level and depth of depravity that this nation has fallen into. I mean, the rise in alternative media and the volume of how many physical entities are out there should tell you something. They're not all surviving based upon the concept that nobody's looking at them, nobody's reading them, nobody's listening to them. They're out there and they're successful because Americans are thirsting. They are starving and hungry for truth. And they know they're not getting it through the Ministry of Propaganda. Now Congress is throwing out this brand new legislative piece. And essentially, their argument is that these faith-based television channels that are on all the cable systems and on all the satellite systems have to, they want to change the nature of how that's done. The reality is that right now, the way it stands is that carriers must prove, they have a must-carry rule, for the record. Must-carry means that it's not optional. They have to offer a certain amount of public access television on satellite and cable companies. And they have to pick up local broadcasts so that even even the smallest, least populous and popular areas and stations can be heard. Now, this legislation from Steve Scalise, a Republican, no surprise there, right? From Louisiana, he's pushing to scrap those rules and to as part of their deregulation of the airways. Let me tell you something. First of all, they've created the monopoly of the airwaves first and foremost, because only government can create a monopoly. Monopolies cannot exist in a true laissez-faire free market. It doesn't work because somebody's always willing to come in and do it faster, cheaper, better. And in this case, what they're essentially saying is that these rules, which force broadcasters to carry local programming, especially religious programming, and the reason that the religious programming, the major networks don't carry it because there's no money in it. They don't pay an advertising fee. I mean, who's advertising on the middle of a religious broadcast? And the truth of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, I don't really care where you stand on the religious fence. It's not about religion. That happens to be the topic, but it's not about religion. What it is about is the United States losing the idea of free speech in an unvarnished, uncensored format. Forget where you stand on religion. This is really, truly a wholesale attempt to silence the alternative media. And the reason for that is because this media, the alternative media, is doing what the mainstream ministry of propaganda cannot and will not. Silencing free speech by nothing other than parliamentary tricks, which is essentially what this is, it's just another in a long line of abuses that should have already generated a new Declaration of Independence by the American people. It's reached a level where we can no longer stand by and allow this equality mentality to determine our own future. The way that this bill is written, the bill would, quote, be a significant detriment to a number of Christian TV stations and the viewers who rely on them for spiritual guidance. That's from the National Religious Broadcasters president. These long-standing carriage rules ensure that viewers can access the important and edifying program that local Christian broadcasters offer free of charge. In other words, you'd have to start paying to be on that cable network or satellite broadcast system. And I got to tell you, this isn't only happening in television. The same concept is happening in the radio, where they're trying to petition the FCC to reinstate the concept of equality for time. You know, when you're on the radio, and if you're a radio station, you have an obligation, if you're going to offer an opportunity for a candidate to come and speak on your radio program, to offer both candidates, regardless of where they stand politically and so forth, an opportunity to come on and debate the issues. Now, personally, I wouldn't think of doing anything less. There are those people who say, I only want to provide one side to the issue. I disagree with that. I think that if you're not listening to both sides of the issue, you're not utilizing the basic foundational element of critical thinking. You have to hear both sides in order to be able to have enough information gathered to make an informed decision. And quite frankly, I don't think either party represents us. So sitting there and saying, well, we're only going to hear Democrat side, or we're only going to hear Republicans, that's a false dichotomy. You're drinking your own Kool-Aid. And mark my words, both parties are pouring Kool-Aid at you in a fire hose torrent. The truth of the matter is that must-carry rules apply mostly to the smaller cable networks out there, and to reduce that must-carry rule or to eliminate it means that these big networks will further solidify their hold over the media that you see, that you hear, that you read. And ladies and gentlemen, if there was ever a time to say, we need new free speech voices out there, this be it. There is no alternative to this, and it really is outside the scope of even some semblance of, see, all of this stuff is pumped on you as if this is really in your best interest. That's the couch that they give you when they try to sell it to you. And I don't care whether you're a religious broadcaster. I'll give you an example. Right now, America's Voice Now, we are working on a project to be on a local cable television program under this reduced access or free access local access programming. For this to be eliminated means that the voice of AVN would be silenced to all the people who have that cable system. Now, we're on a radio station in the area, the same area where this cable station is, but not everybody listens to radio. And then there's a lot of folks out there who listen to radio because they don't have cable or don't want cable or don't have a satellite or don't want one or can't afford one. Are we trying to say that those people should be marginalized? Also, the public broadcasting stations, when we're talking about on cable as an example or satellite, they're always in the lower range. So even if you buy the cheapest cable package or satellite package out there, you get access to the local programming. The truth is that the more consolidation we see by the Ministry of Propaganda, the worse things get for the American people in terms of knowing what's really going on in your world. Pericles was attributed with the quote that, just because you don't take an active interest in politics, never fear, politics takes an active interest in you. And there's plenty of people out there that don't want to be bothered, don't want to listen, don't want to think about it. It's that fear factor of, you know what? I'm scared and I don't want to think about that. I'd rather watch the Kardashians or a sitcom or whatever the case may be. I mean, that kind of head in the sand thinking is their prerogative, I suppose. I mean, I think it's self-defeating. It's that self-treason mentality we talked about earlier, where you're in denial. You're refusing to acknowledge that whatever it is that you're doing is harmful to you. It's self-treason. You can't mandate that someone not operate that way. But those people that are interested in their future, those people that are interested in knowing what's going on in the world around them, I believe that they have a right to know. And they have a right to not be indoctrinated by a propaganda media that is really carrying a torch for a fascist dictatorship. That's where we are, ladies and gentlemen. Let's stop pretending and stop saying, well, we can't use those kinds of words. Those kinds of words are inflammatory. Well, as I recall, when we were talking about the budget crisis and we were talking about the national debt at the beginning of the last boondoggle we had when they were government shut down and all that nonsense, I mean, we were hearing Democrats coming out and saying, those Republicans are suicide bombers with bombs strapped on them. They're arsonists. With all due respect, I don't think acknowledging the fact that we live in a fascist police state is any less harsh rhetoric. And I would garner to say that the truth of the matter is, it's a lot more accurate a statement. Those people who were the extremists in the Congress who were saying, no, we're drawing a line here, and we're going to say, we're not funding this anymore. Even if it means that we've got to put the government into sleep mode, with all due respect, they were right. I know that there were certain people hurt within the element of government, those people who were employees and so forth. But let's be candid, folks. We made them completely whole, and then some. They all got paid. They've all gotten the back pay for whatever period of time they were off. They all got a healthy, nice little vacation on us, the backs of the taxpayers. And then they came back and with wild abandon began to pump out brand new rules and regulations. You know, listen, for the record, Congress doesn't really work all that hard. I think last year they passed some 300 bills, but there were 6,000 rules and regulations that were passed by unaccountable, unelected bureaucrats in extra-constitutional administrative agencies that are ruling your life. Trust me, it's not the idiots over in Congress. It's the unnamed, faceless bureaucrats in administrative agencies that have hijacked the principles of liberty, freedom, and self-governance and self-reliance. If you want to silence something, let's silence them. Show me a constitutional existence or an argument, a rational argument for their existence constitutionally. It doesn't say that. It says very explicitly that no law may be passed except by Congress. And yet you live under the tyranny of administrative agencies and the laws they pass every day. Who's telling you that? When was the last time you saw anybody on Fox, CNN, MSNBC, CBS, NBC, ABC talk to you about administrative agencies and their overreach, their unconstitutional existence? Well, we need all those agencies. Why? Why? First of all, they massively overlap. Secondly, they have lately given themselves authority by fiat, dictatorial rule changes. I mean, look, the Federal Register is growing by leaps and bounds. It grows thousands of pages a day. All of those rules and regulations are the ones that's what's hampering our economy. That's what's hampering our business, our ability to be functional in business. That's what's destroying our jobs. That's what's giving our jobs away overseas. This stuff is completely, and nobody in the media is talking to you about it. Not in the mass media, not in the mass ministry of propaganda media. They're silent on these issues. I know that Fox News, to the conservative thinker, or to the conservative, segment of the population, many of them consider it to be the alpha and the omega, the sun, moon, and stars. Well, with all due respect, I'm asking flat out, why hasn't, and why did I read about it in the Seattle Bee or something like that? The only place, I submitted a thing to Bill O'Reilly on his Mad as Hell segment saying, why don't you tell Americans that when they sign up for Obamacare and they are kicked onto the Medicaid rolls, that all of their future assets are subject to lien by the government for any health bills that they incur? Nobody's telling America that. I've heard scant reference to something as evil and insidious as Common Core. I don't really care where you stand on it, whether you agree with it or not. The simple truth is we should be able to have an open discussion about it here in this country. And if the media is not bringing it to your attention to have an open discussion, then they haven't done their job. And that is, ladies and gentlemen, the truth. You see, it's not the media's job just to make money for their investors. It's not their job to show you commercials. It's not their job to sway your thinking or nudge you so that you line up to properly fall into place in the funnel. It's their job to educate you and inform you about what's happening around you so that you can do your duty, your obligation under the Constitution and this republic, so that you can take your duty and your responsibility seriously. But how can you take your responsibility seriously when the information surrounding you isn't there? The number of people that are out there right now who don't really understand what's going on around us is staggering. I pulled an article up the other day about how Pennsylvanians were they did one of these pullover things where they stop you on the side of the road and so forth and so on. And this thing was backed by the federal government, and it was supposed to be one of these voluntary survey checkpoints. And it was run by a private firm in Pennsylvania, and it was run on behalf of the White House's Office of National Drug Control Policy. Now, what they were supposed to be doing was pulling people over and asking them if they were on drugs or drinking, which, first of all, is a Fourth Amendment violation right off the bat. You know, it's an intimidation thing. It's indoctrinating people into accepting subservience. But to make matters worse, they told the city council that they were only going to be doing these surveys, when in fact what they were really doing was running cheek swabs on people and capturing DNA records. I mean, what the heck is that? Why isn't the media talking about that? If they refused, and they refused staunchly enough, they were allowed to leave. But let me tell you something. The intimidation factor was so high that the vast majority of people consented. Because you're told to always do what the good police officer tells you to do. They had law enforcement cars there with flashing lights. It was an air of authority that doesn't exist. It was a private company. Why isn't America being told what's going on around our nation? WorldNet Daily has an article out there about a Democrat who's launched a brand new proposal to give unlimited power to unqualified social workers to investigate every homeschool parent. Do you know that it's in the Obamacare document and under the rules of Obamacare that every parent who is on any kind of assistance can have their home barged into by healthcare representatives for investigation? Tell me that's not a Fourth Amendment violation. Why isn't anybody in the media telling you that by your signing up for Obamacare, based on a law which is coercively forcing you at the point of a gun to sign up for Obamacare, that you are being told by one law passed in 2010 that you have to violate your Fourth Amendment right against unauthorized and illegal search and seizure, unwarranted search and seizure? Because when you do, you're signing and you're agreeing by using a website that you have no alternative but to use under the law, you're agreeing to waive your Fourth Amendment right. And you are allowing all of the information that you submit to be used for, and this is their words, not mine, investigation, auditing, and law enforcement prosecution. So, and not to mention the fact that it's also violating your Fifth Amendment right, because your Fifth Amendment right says you have a right not to self-incriminate. Why isn't the media talking about that? And the Sixth Amendment, which says you have a right to a trial. There's no trial by the IRS because it's an administrative agency. You don't get a trial by jury by them. You're heard by an administrative judge. There's no trial. And there's no jury. And the person who's hearing the case as the administrative law judge works for the IRS itself. Tell me that's not a conflict of interest. Where is the media talking about these things? If it's not for alternative media like America's Voice Now and thousands of others out there, you're not hearing it at all. And that's the fear. That's the thing that Americans should be demanding. This is government censorship via hissy fit. And those who don't see that, well, with all due respect, you're going to rue the day at some point, because the fist is closing rapidly on us. And it may be wrapped in velvet now, but beneath that is steel. You're listening to America's Voice Now. I'd love for you to join us on our website. Every day on there, I post up articles and stories that you can look at, and I put commentary on them that is my own take on those stories, or an inkling as to why they're important for you to review and read. I encourage you to please do that. You can visit us by going to americasvoicenow.org. If you like what we're doing and you like what we're talking about, if you find any of this valuable, please share it with your friends. And if you can support us in any way, I do this completely voluntary. I don't get paid. I pay all the bills here. I do it all on my own dime, and there's a couple of folks I want to greatly thank. Yesterday I hit our P.O. box, and I'll tell you what, I was very impressed by some people that really stood up to be patriots. And talk about them tomorrow. But I got to tell you, go to America's Voice Now and visit it, share it, read some of the stories. Then you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com. We'll be right back.